and recovery here at MEMA, and I'm joined by the MEMA recovery team, including Lorraine Eddy, our senior program coordinator for PA, and Erica Heidelberg, who is our public assistance officer and recovery unit supervisor, and Nicole Goulet, who is recovery support staff. I'm going to take just about 3 minutes to open this webinar. Again, this webinar is centered around the new FEMA expedited funding process, for which we've been planning a way to intake those requests in an organized fashion to package up your expedited funding requests so that they can get to FEMA for quick review and hopefully quick approval. I would like to, stress that this is a new process for us and FEMA. We're working very closely with them as a team to get this right the first time and make the process as quick and painless as possible. That being said, I would caution, that we get those requests in. There is a FEMA process behind the scenes that will go on where we submit the projects through their consolidated resource center, and then once it's approved, we still have to do the state contract process, which does not change. That said, we're going to do, we are here to do this as quickly as possible with you. And I would also like to take a minute to sort of go through what expedited funding means. So, and the team will do this a lot more in depth than I will, but expedited funding is 50%, of your estimated costs, for which you're submitting little backup or an estimate for the future. So when we talk in terms of 50%, FEMA pays 75%. So, if you submitted 100% of those costs that you're looking for, FEMA will obligate 75% of that 50%, right? And the other 75% of the next 50% wouldn't come until we do a full reconciliation of that, initial 50% and then, any additional costs. So, if you don't go through the expedited funding request and you'd rather go for, well, I have all of my costs, I can document that. I would rather just get full payment once when I'm done, or full payment to this point and then go forward. That will get you more money. And, we'll do our best to get them through the system. But at the end of the day, we request that expedited funding requests are you're sort of honest in your self-appraisal of, if not, but for this funding, we stand to not make payroll, or we stand to, go broke in the next, 60 to 90 days, or whatever the case may be. We're here to help you. But again, if it's something that is not critical to, keeping the lights on, our normal process will be kicking off, where you'll be able to submit full costs and get full reimbursement at that point. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team here to take you through the webinar. I appreciate your time. This will be recorded and put on the website. If there is anyone that wants to view it again, or within your staff you want it to have viewed, or others that that didn't get a chance to view it, we're going to put it on the website. And finally, the link that they're going to go through today is live. So when you begin submitting, we will be, this MEMA and FEMA staff will be on the back end to review your submission. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pat. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency's webinar for expedited projects. My name is Lorraine Eddy. I'm a program coordinator with the MEMA Disaster Recovery Unit. The Disaster Recovery Unit has a team of program coordinators like myself who are here to assist you with questions you might have regarding FEMA's reimbursement process. I would like to preface this by saying that this webinar is formatted to not accommodate for questions and answers. However, this webinar session is being recorded, and the taped audio will be available on MEMA's website soon. The Commonwealth received a major disaster declaration, FEMA 4496, which includes emergency protective measures. The assistance FEMA provides through its public assistance program is subject to a cost share. The reimbursable federal share is 75% of your community or organization's eligible costs. The non-federal share or applicant share is the remaining 25%. You may visit MEMA's website at mass.gov/MEMA to access information and resources specific to COVID-19 Federal Major Disaster Declaration. The easiest and fastest way to get to this information is to type FEMA-4496 in the search engine at the top of the page. You will then select COVID-19 Federal Disaster Declaration. You will find resources available on our website, such as a link to register for webinars, past and future webinar videos, and the Expedited project request form. The prerequisites for submitting a request for expedited projects require an applicant to have an approved Request for Public Assistance, RPA, in FEMA's Grants Portal. If you do not have a Grants Portal account, you may go to the MEMA website to obtain the portal registration request form. Once you complete the registration form, you may submit the registration form to our recovery inbox. Our recovery inbox address is disaster.recovery@mass.gov. The applicant may request approval for expedited funding from the recipient in FEMA for their estimated or projected cost. If an applicant's initial request to FEMA will only provide 50% of the federal share based on limited information, the applicant will then be required to provide all information to support its claim before receiving the remaining funding at project closeout. If the final actual costs are lower than the 50% initial estimate that was reimbursed through the expedited request, the subrecipient or applicant will be required to return the excess funds. You are encouraged to submit conservative estimates as they are recommended for your expedited projects. In response to COVID-19, an applicant may have a need for immediate funding to conduct response activities that address a threat. Expedited funding is not immediate funding. This process is meant to expedite a project through the FEMA workflow review queues. FEMA may provide expedited funding for emergency protective measure projects that exceed the large project cost threshold of $131,000 and $131,100. An applicant requiring expedited funding should express that desire to MEMA by submitting an expedited request form. This form can be found on MEMA's website by selecting expedited funding for COVID-19, which will link you to the request form. MEMA will forward the request to FEMA for review and approval. As you fill out the information on the expedited project request, you will be assisting FEMA with defining specific information in regards to your project scopes of work and cost estimates. Project scopes of work and cost estimates are clear operational periods, 30, 60, or 90 days. The operational period you select will define for FEMA the number of days you are seeking expedited funding on that particular request. You agree to be funded at the incident's federal share of FEMA 75%, and the non-federal, which is the responsibility of the applicant, for the remaining 25%. You will be asked to describe high-level activities performed or plans to be performed. Confirmation that the applicant has not and will not request funding for these FEMA eligible activities from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, to include the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention or other federal agencies. The total estimated cost being requested will include high-level calculations. For example, the methodology for calculating labor costs would include the number of personnel, their hourly rate, times the number of days you choose as your operational period, whether it is 30, 60, or 90 days. If an applicant uses their own equipment, you would calculate the average hours per day the equipment was used, time and hourly rate. If you are unable to define an hourly rate, you may find an hourly rate on FEMA Schedule of Equipment Rate document. The FEMA Schedule of Equipment Rates can be found under Public Assistance Resources on our website. If you needed to rent equipment, report the actual or estimated rental agreement price or purchase price if purchased. For materials, identify the amount of materials or supplies used or what you project to use with an estimated cost. For contract work, please provide an estimated unit price. This slide shows a sample of emergency protective measure work activities. It is not inclusive of the complete list of eligible work. You can refer to the FEMA fact sheet for eligible emergency protective measure activities available on the MEMA website for additional eligible emergency protective measures. As a recap to today's webinar, we'd like to display for you the flow chart, beginning with the step number 1, which is to complete the expedited project request form and submit it to MEMA at the disaster.recovery@mass.gov inbox. MEMA staff is consistently monitoring this inbox for request forms. Then MEMA will review and process your request for intake and forward it to FEMA for review. FEMA will review your request and begin developing a project worksheet based on the information you submitted on the expedited project request form. The project report will undergo a series of internal reviews and will make its way to the applicant's review queue. The primary point of contact for your community or organization will receive notification via email that the project is available for your review and sign off. The email will provide you with the link to your portal login, where you will select My Tasks to access the project. At this time, the webinar is concluded. In closing, I would like to thank all of our attendees. Our disaster recovery team looks forward to working with you throughout this process. Thank you.